On this week's GTA 6 O'clock, Rockstar continues to tease GTA 6, which contains the letters VI and then the number 69. The Grand Theft Auto movie.
But I don't know, in cinema, is that groundbreaking?
And a real-life case perfect for the story. A man has found $4 million worth of cocaine while looking for sea turtle nests. It's all here on this week's GTA 6 O'clock. Hello, welcome along to GTA 6 O'clock, episode 31. I am JJ, and I am here in the studio with Dan Dawkins, DD, who was just having a little chuckle at that intro because he loved it.
Oh my God, I'm genuinely creasing up. That's, James, that's an 8 out of 10.
Yes.
Out of 10. But I don't know what gears you've got left from there, because that was husk.
Well, I've been away. I might not have had a lot of sleep. Maybe all of these contributing factors go towards the 8 out of 10. On this week's show, a lot of you, well, 95% of you probably, will be pleased to hear that there is no more dream analysis. I will be keeping all of that hot info to myself from now on. We also closed last week's show talking about a few points. One of them was the topography of Florida, which might bring up some game design issues. We're going to just recover that in a second. But before then, in the notes, Dan has written in capital letters, important user comments. So I think we should cover some of those first.
Oh, these are vital comments. Now, as you might know, in the last few weeks, we've talked about how realistic should GTA 6 get? Should you eat to replenish your cores? Should you, refuel your car? What lunacy. Well, I mean, and of course, lots of people came out in support of this saying, yes, you should be able to refuel your car. It's great. It adds the realism. I've been an advocate of saying, no, I think it's too much. I'm not a fan. And people have come out in support.
And so four people have come out in support.
4 people, which as a percentage of the commentship is not insignificant. So at the Blue Birch says, great show, guys. And he says, please note, I'm Team Dan when it comes to car refueling. Smiley face. Smiley face to you, Blue Birch. At GamerLife3505 says, and this is a very emphatic agreement, 1 zillion% agree fueling should be optional and hardly ever run out. It would be too demanding. I am with you.
But I think that was our discussion, was that it is sort of going to be optional in that you maybe have to do it a couple of times, but it's not going to be, every mission you have to go refill your car.
Optional 1 zillion%, says GamerLife3505. At Matty96 says, I'm Team DD with this. Thank you, my friend. And he says, there might be a mission that we fail a few times due to petrol. It sounds, he used a word that's a bit more emphatic than this, but bad and like a meme. And then finally, Daniel Berry 4765 says, fueling cars sounds miserable. Now, there was probably millions of other comments that I'm yet to read in support of my fueling stance. In the absence of that, we'll take these 4. I'm obviously laughing because this is not the hill I will die on, but it is amusing that there's become this weird schism between the pro-refueling and anti-refueling GTA community. Let not this divide us, friends.
No.
We can grow past this. The world has enough problems.
Well, that was an ingenious segue as well, Dan. Speaking of hills to die on and hills in general, is that, as I mentioned, we did talk about the topography of Florida, and we've had a few comments about this, and I've done a little bit more research on it, so we can just jump into that. Harry via email has said, firstly, I want to say I'm a massive fan of your guys' work. I think there will be small hills and bigger hills. You could see some of this in the leaks. And I guess what we were discussing last week is, obviously, yes, there are going to be hills. I think what we're talking about is like the Mount Chiliad style mountains. Like, hills are one thing, but having like focal points on the map, even as like a massive mountain that you can go to, it's that kind of thing that I think we're talking about, rather than like, I guess, what we would consider in England as small hills. Rather than, big Chiliad-style mountains and things like that. 100%. Speaking of which, Dom Valley on YouTube said the closest mountain range to Florida is the Blue Ridge Mountains in the state of Georgia. I believe that there are potential for parts of Georgia to be included, and this has been discussed on the podcast, regardless of the amount of cities included in the game, and the huge potential for a section of the game set in either Cuba or South America could make up for the lack of topography. And I'm glad we are using that word more and more. We have talked about this before. I don't know Georgia is the next state up. And the inclusion of that is just, may or may not happen. Interesting thing to discuss is sections of the game to be set in Cuba or South America. And we have sort of touched on this before, thinking, could there be a North Yankton style split in the story where you go off to somewhere like that? I think that's entirely possible. I don't see huge sections of the game being set there, given what we know about the size of the already existing map. I don't think adding like a whole load of explorable areas in Cuba or South America is going to be a thing. But yes, like a North Yankton or like the Red Dead mission where you go, I'm being careful here because Dan's still playing it, where you go to a different location, that kind of thing. I can see that totally happening.
Yeah, I can see some logic in Cuba because it's geographically not a million miles away. There's an overlap between, I guess, Florida, Miami, and Cuban culture. There were radio stations. There was a link between one of the rumored Lucia actresses and like Cuban heritage or Cuban background. It's still a bit stretchy, but I think that would make more sense than South America, which I think is like a big leap to suddenly go there. I mean, if you're going there, you may as well go to, China or something. It's, it doesn't make an awful lot of sense, really.
Yeah, I mean, the latest rumors and speculations around the internet are that they are going to feature in some way. Like you'll have a few islands off the edge of the map. That's a thing that we've discussed before. I think it could totally be a thing. And finally, Noel Dad on YouTube, to your point about Florida, Dan, said Florida isn't that flat at all. South Florida is mostly flat, yes, but even upwards towards Orlando, Tampa, Daytona Beach, there are hills. No mountains, but the I-10 corridor from Jacksonville on the Atlantic Ocean by the border of Alabama, there are definitely hills and even some rather sizable ones. If you're driving up from the east to our state's Capitol building, whose shape would fit very well with some Rockstar, more naughty themes. If you've looked that up, I did a quick Google search for it. If you just look up that Capitol building, it looks like, from a certain angle, the male appendage, which is hilarious.
If I were to guess an appendage.
And he does say, yeah, it would be a good laugh if you Google that. But he disagrees. Flat in South Florida, yes, but the northern half is rather hilly. And yes, topography is a word. So what I would say to this is this assumes, which we believe to be true to an extent, that GTA 6 will encompass most of Florida. Jacksonville is in the northeast of the state, the very top northeast of it. So it might be a stretch to get all the way up there. And I think, as we've discussed before, there could be some map manipulation to move a couple of these things around and down and shrink everything a bit.
Yeah.
However, Orlando and Tampa, I think, are definitely more likely. At 312 feet, Sugarloaf Mountain, which I think you discussed before, Dan, is the highest point on the Florida Peninsula, located on the western shore of, I'm going to say this wrong, but let's give it a go, Lake Apoca? Yes, Dan is looking...
I won't contradict that.
But the flip side of this is Tampa, the highest point in the city, is only 48 feet, which is 15 meters above sea level. So Tampa, pretty flat. However, there is one named mountain in Hillsborough County, which is the highest and most prominent mountain in that region, is called Big Cockroach Mound. Now, this is amazing, this whole thing about this, and I only stumbled across this in the last few days. This is on the western downward arm, if we're calling it that. So it's just south of Tampa. And this little mound or island has been owned by one mysterious family for years. And as I've written here, if this isn't in the game, I'm going to eat my Los Santos hat, because Florida just keeps on giving with its crazy stories. So you can see, and like the more you look into Florida, the more you can see why it's, I think, such an easy choice for Rockstar to go. This is great. There's so much content here. Let's go back. So some facts about the big cockroach mound. It's Lewis F. Simmons III who owns it. He does not consider himself a rich man, but he does own the island. Him and his family have irritated government officials for 3 generations by refusing to sell their undeveloped island deep in the Cockroach Bay Aquatic Preserve in the southern Hillsborough County. There's no bridge to the tiny outpost, but about 100, and it's about 100 yards from the shore. There are myths surrounding the island, legends, and it's become a legend in this part of the state. Simmons is a bit of a mystery himself. Local lore has it that Simmons is a recluse, perhaps nearing 100, who relies on friends to check on his island. A couple of anglers say that they've heard the governor gave him the island as a favour. In truth, the man that locals call Old Man Simmons is the 3rd generations of Simmonses to own the land. The man is said to be a curmudgeonly hermit, and is a chatty retired quality control engineer for TWR Inc.'s Delta and Atlas space programs. The island was once part of a failed get-rich-quick plan conducted by Simmons' grandfather, and then there are stories of buried pirate treasure.
Of course.
In reality, Big Cockroach Mound is a 10-acre island of seashells covered by dense thorny bush, mangroves and gumbo limbo trees. The island is home to 3 American Indian burial grounds, making it the most archaeologically significant land in the preserve. Artifacts that are so significant that workers with the Smithsonian Institute once travelled here to help produce a map of the island and its contents. I mean, if you're ever looking for the, game-rich lore, you've got a man who people think is 100 living on an island on his own that has got Indian burial grounds on it that once the Smithsonians went and made a map of, hunting for remains and or pirate treasure. Come on.
It writes itself. This is surely like a Strangers and Freaks style mission. Even the main mission played in the right way. I think this has got such potential. I do like the idea of fun of going, someone telling you to go out there, you can make your fortune, and it's just all stones. And then it's the burial sites and the ghosts or whatever it is. But that's a really fun bit of research.
Yeah, that was really great. And come sometime next year, maybe this time next year, we will be visiting that place, and I will be like referencing this episode and going, aha, I forgot I talked about that, but look, I was right. There is one more bit from last week that we talked about, like trailer scenes from trailer 1, which may or may not be giving us the whole picture. Something we didn't mention, but a lot of you did in the comments, was that yes, Ned Luke has actually gone on record to say that his voiceover for the first trailer was recorded specifically for the trailer. And the "Why did I move here? I guess it was the weather" line, one of the most famous lines, isn't actually in the game at all. It was just in the trailer. So a little bit more fuel there to add to the rumor mill. I actually think if you listen to the recording of that GTA 5 trailer, that is very much done in one session. Like it is like you say, it was written specifically for the trailer. I think the lines in the GTA 6 trailer aren't that at all. Like I think they are cut from other bits that have already been recorded. I don't know why they would have done that, but it does sound like that is definitely what happens. Like it's not a clean one take read of like, okay, here are the trailer lines, just read these out, or like, here's your monologue for this bit. It's very much made from a lot of other bits and pieces, I think. So, let's see. So Dan, let's kick off the news this week with some GTA 6 teases. Now, history would suggest that Rockstar loves to hide teases in screenshots, and then when we all go back and look at them months and months later, we go, of course it was obvious. Why didn't we pick up on that? The most memorable of which we have covered on the podcast and talked about before, is the 10th anniversary t-shirt called the 3 question marks T, which, as you'll all remember, probably had a series of numbers on it, which once decoded read, "One day will reveal all." And then there was a date on there that ended up being December the 5th, 2023. And if you dive even further, maybe there was a suggestion of 9 a.m., which all corresponded to the Trailer 1 release day. Coincidence? Maybe. But also, that is what happened. So, and if you really want to put some more meat on that horse, in September 2023, Rockstar posted an image with the letters from the Vinewood sign, but actually it'd been cut out to be VI, being clearly visible. And then the moon in that shot was in the waning gibbous phase, Dan, which you'll know occurs on December the 1st.
Everyone knows that.
Which was, the Trailer 1 announcement day saying the trailer is coming. What does this all mean for GTA 6? Well, the recent suggestions are that Rockstar are doing this again. There's an image from the Drift Tuning GTA Online expansion, which happened a couple of weeks ago, and there was a number plate on that image from the middle car, which contains the letters VI and then the number 69. If you would like to use our favorite word of the podcast, or one of our favorite words, if you'd like to extrapolate that into what that could mean, now in the English calendar, not the American way of writing it, 6/9 would be Monday, September the 9th. So is that a hint that something is coming? We've said before on this podcast, we think September would be a good time for another content drop, most likely screenshots. Dan, your first thoughts about this?
I don't know.
Cool.
I think September's a really good shout. Do I think this is a link? I don't know. Time will tell. I think we just looked at this off air, trying to see a consistent line through in the way they tease the dates. And the triple question mark t-shirt was kind of in the American date calendar format, and this would be UK format. So I don't know is the answer.
Yeah, they just changed things around for 6. Don't worry about that. September, here we come. Just to add a little bit more fuel to the fire, as part of the Chop Shop DLC, which was December the 12th, 2023, way back, there was a tattoo you could get in that update containing the letters VI, which was below a magic 8-ball. The update was obviously released a week after the GTA 6 Trailer 1, added a whole lot of tattoos to GTA Online's online mode.
Yeah.
But is all of these things a coincidence, Dan? How far down the rabbit hole of rumors and things like this do you normally go?
So I think, if I'm absolutely honest, when it comes to the teasing of release dates and cryptic information in, prior GTA updates and releases, I'm not 100% convinced. I think maybe sometimes they try and do it. I think the release dates of trailers is a little bit driven by factors that are sort of outside of the dev team. I think it will be a conversation between knowing how big companies work, it will be a conversation between the development team, the marketing and PR team, plus their external partners. And between them, they'll probably have to come up with this is the right day. We thought it would be this one, but actually it's this one. Now, maybe at Rockstar, they're just so forceful. They can just say, it's this day, and all of reality will bend to this day because we've put a clue in a game and that's going to come true. And I could also believe that. But I just think there's so many factors at play when it comes to, we've talked about, the reason there's leaks and the reason it's difficult to know what to do, where to launch media. I think it's really hard to coordinate. So I think there's probably an element of that. Now we know the answer, let's reverse engineer the clues in the equation. I think there's an element of that. But generally, I'm someone who, likes to believe in the fairy on the other side of the moon. I love a conspiracy theory, and I do love the idea of breadcrumb trails left in games. And I spent a large part of it's ludicrous to even say I've made a career of this, a large part of my journalism career pursuing fairies behind moons, and particularly writing stuff about the Metal Gear Solid games, where I genuinely think Hideo Kojima would try to create a breadcrumb trail. But then I felt like the Death Stranding campaign didn't deliver on that. And I think for someone who likes to look for a higher truth, it just felt like a load of mumbo jumbo designed to get people talking, but not with a meaningful solution path. That felt quite sad to me. And whether that's because I lost interest and actually it was cleverer than I realised. And with GTA, I don't know. I want to believe, but I don't know, James. I don't know.
Yeah. Knowing what we know about how things are made and when trailers are released and all of the factors that can contribute to that, I would love to think that they had said, actually, this is the day we're releasing the trailer. We're going to do whatever we can to release it on this day. But like you say, there were quite a lot of other external factors that might not have let them do that. And then to reverse engineer something is easier once you know the answer. You can just go like, I'm going to make this fit. Again, like you, I would love to think that T-shirt was made. And I do a little bit think that the T-shirt was made for the trailer release day, but even if it had come out, a few days later, we probably still would have gone back and gone, oh, look, the date's close enough. They knew at the time it was going to be December. They just didn't quite know the day. So, I don't know. Well, we will find out if there's any more hints and that we can look back on as we get closer to release. So now let's move on to talk about the GTA movie that never was. There's been quite a lot of talk about a GTA movie in the recent weeks. This has come because of more news from the Rockstar Games co-founder and former head writer Dan Houser has been talking about the Grand Theft Auto movie, and he has said, and I quote, "It just never made sense, and that it was a huge risk considering the reputation of the GTA brand." Now, this has been a conversation that's been going on for quite some time. Back in 2019, Take-Two's Interactive Strauss Zelnick made a similar comment, and he said that, quote, "Part of it is if we were to do something like that, we'd want to have complete creative control to make sure we expressed GTA in the way that we wanted. And that would mean we'd need to finance that motion picture." Now, obviously, them deciding to finance a movie is a huge commitment. Movies are hundreds of millions of dollars these days. Probably not as much as it cost them to make GTA 6, ironically. Yeah. But still, it's a movie. And I think what they're probably talking about there is like the potential, I guess, damage to the brand that a movie flop could do. We've seen, people try and make movies out of video games to varying degrees of success in the past. And I wouldn't say any of them have inherently damaged the franchise so much. Like, there's been some average Tomb Raider films, but actually now they're not making they haven't made a Tomb Raider game in ages. But Amazon do own the Tomb Raider IP, and they are making another game. So, I don't think it would have damaged it that much. But I think one of the questions I put further down, Dan, is like, do you think really that there is a GTA storyline that could translate to a movie, other than just what I guess the Hollywood execs would want to do is like, well, it's a film about stealing cars, right? But I guess maybe GTA 4's story is close-ish to like something that you would expect to see in a movie.
Yeah, I think this is actually a really interesting thread to pull out, because what it asks the question of is, why do people love Grand Theft Auto at the base level? Why is it so popular? And what would translate well or not well to a movie? And like, is it the pure storytelling? I don't necessarily think so. I think GTA games have told some quite good stories, and like we can dive into why probably GTA 4 is the best of them, the best self-contained. But I don't think it's really that. Like I think the reason people love GTA, and this is related to why I don't think there's a movie, is because it is like we've talked about. It's almost like the passing of a lunar cycle. It's a game that comes along once a generation. We haven't had a GTA since 2012. It's been a long time. And each of them represents like the great white hope of a new generation for what video games can be. Technically, they always move the dial. They're a poster child for what video games can be and the tech that surrounds them, right? And it's almost about what have those wizards at Rockstar created next, and what is the technological leap they finally put into place? The attention to detail. It goes back to that quote I always use, the one of, why did I move here? I guess it was that thing, the magic, I don't know, And that's all about the roots of old Hollywood and the belief that somebody somewhere, the Wizard of Oz, was real. He wasn't just a man behind a curtain, that there is genuine magic in the world. That's the heart of the GTA experience to me. A movie, movies are more disposable. I think it's hard for a movie to, movies that genuinely change the belief system of what a movie can be are very few and far between. You might have had films like, I don't know, like The Matrix that introduced bullet time, or maybe more recently something like the Spider-Verse films and that animation style that did something technically, but that doesn't feel like that wouldn't feel right for GTA in a movie form. No. I don't think to be a purely technical showcase feels weird. And then what is it about a spirit of Americana and the American journey and someone bettering themselves? Maybe, but like all films are like that. They're all about character development journeys. So what would be uniquely Rockstar about it? And I think you could make a GTA film that was set in modern day America. It was very satirical and aggressive and violent, and the character would have to steal cars, and there would be cameos from, we talked about this off air and laughed about it, there'd be a cameo where Ned Luke's working in a bank or in a pancake store, or Trevor Phillips appears, or whatever. There'd be loads of Easter eggs, and fans would go, oh yeah, love it, brilliant. But like, what's the truly compelling reason to make it? I don't know. And I'm sorry, I'm riffing, but I do agree that GTA 4 is the closest Rockstar have come of telling a tale of consequence about modern day America. And I think particularly when that was made, and we're going back quite a number of years now, it was an immigrant's tale in what was an increasingly melting pot. New York's always been a melting pot, but I think increasingly it felt like it was boiling up. And I think time has proved that's become more of the story. Immigration is one of the stories of the world right now. For good or for ill, it's causing a lot of political division. And I think GTA 4 was a really interesting examination of that at that point in time. But I don't know, in cinema, is that groundbreaking? I don't know. I don't know what you think, but like, I don't know what they could bring that makes it a uniquely GTA experience.
I think that's the difference, right? You would assume, and this is probably why it hasn't been made, that they would, Rockstar would want it to be something unique and something that people would talk about. So it's not just another film. Like, they would want it to be held up as this thing where you're like, oh, actually, they told the story, they told the story in a different way, or, they did something different, or it was all filmed in this certain way that made it unique. And a lot of people have done that with other films. We've seen like 1917 made it look like it was filmed in one take. It wasn't. But that was like, something that was held up as, oh, this is groundbreaking because now this film is all in one take. In a similar way that, the remake of God of War is all done in one take. And that's obviously adapted from that kind of technique. And we've seen, even going back to like Kill Bill, when you got, I think that was one of the first films where it was actually like chapterized, where they were like, hey, this is chapter 1, part 2, part 3. And you're like, oh, okay, well, that's something different. I'm sure there are multiple new things that people are thinking up, but would it translate to a film Rockstar want to make? I'm not sure. And actually, there's been recently, Jack Black has been talking about this in an interview with one of our sister publications, Total Film. He was talking about his role as Claptrap in the upcoming Borderlands film.
Yeah.
He was asked what games he would like to see adapted for the big screen. And he has said that he was shocked that no one has made a film adaptation of any Rockstar Games IPs before, explicitly calling out Grand Theft Auto and Red Dead Redemption. He said, I can't believe they haven't already started making a movie of any of the Rockstar games, Grand Theft Auto, but especially Red Dead Redemption. Jack said, those things are already like movies, I guess that's the thing. Some video games are already halfway there to telling those kind of stories, and there are some movies that are like video games. And I guess that is sort of the point, right? Especially in Red Dead's case, what are you going to do? Like, the game is almost a movie in itself, albeit a very long one. But all you're going to do is adapt that story for a film audience, shrink it down, make it different, and then you're just making a Western rather than, a Red Dead type spin-off, which I guess has happened. We've seen adaptations quite recently with like The Last of Us, which is a direct lift almost of the game. The Fallout film, the Fallout series on Amazon Prime is less so. It's more of its own story, but it uses the universe really well. And there's been loads of other, spin-offs like Cyberpunk Edgerunners, One Piece on Netflix, Castlevania, Tomb Raider. There's a new Tomb Raider series coming to Amazon Prime, you would think, tied into the new game that Amazon now own and will release at some point. As we mentioned, the Borderlands film is coming. We've had the Uncharted film, Detective Pikachu. Like, there's definitely been a shift in the last 5 or so years of video games making that leap into other forms of media, some more successfully than others. Like, we were talking just before we started recording about the Uncharted film, and like, it was fine, but it was definitely leaning on the name a lot. And, and one of the biggest stars in the world at the time, and then just going, oh, but some of those set pieces you did in the game are quite good, so we're just going to put them in the film. But as you mentioned, Dan, great cameo from Nolan North in that film, which is exactly the kind of thing that you'd think would happen if they wanted to make, well, if Hollywood wanted to make a GTA film.
Yeah, and another challenge here, and this is just the very practical marketing-based challenge, and this is something a lot of movies have. GTA is a very adult, 18-rated video game. Now, would the movie echo that and then become like an R-rated or an 18-plus movie? Now, the challenge with that then becomes you narrow your target market and you lose all of that. And I know this as I've done it myself, that lucrative family market who are taking their kids because they've played the game. And I know for a fact there's a lot of people who play GTA who should not play GTA. It's not appropriate for them. Their parents have naively let them play it. I've seen, kids like age 10 or something playing GTA 5. GTA 5 has got language that is so callous it would make your hair fall out, right? Even as a 10-year-old. So I think they would lose all of that market, and it's why a film like the Mario Brothers movie makes more sense, because it's a classic universal family film. The addressable market for that is enormous. With GTA, I don't think it is, unless they then made a decision between, do we make a GTA that's, let's say, and I think this is what once upon a time someone like Dan Houser might have thought, could you make a GTA that's a bit more like True Detective, or probably True Detective Season 1, which was like a crime procedural, but was actually a little bit about fate, choice in the universe, and something a bit bigger than a classic crime procedural. But it was also super noodly and quite adult and quite dark. Or do you go, we're basically making Free Guy, and it's, and then it becomes a parody of itself, and it doesn't really feel true to GTA. And as you were talking, sort of condensing my thoughts, why do people love GTA? Another huge part of it is because it's all about freedom. It's all about the player writing their own story through emergent moments. It's about you riding the chaos of the sandbox and using your knowledge of the physics and the fun, and just crazy stuff happens. Like, movies are by definition not that. They're linear experiences. I don't see how it's comparable. And it's the same reason, I believe that, for example, the Metal Gear Solid movie, with Solid Snake as Oscar Isaac, is probably in development hell, because Metal Gear Solid is really about the player's active role, and that forming part of the narrative. Your ability to control the story is part of the story, particularly in Metal Gear Solid 2, that almost points the game back at you and go, you're a bozo, and I, Metal Gear Solid 2, have played you like a fool. That's clever, but you can only do that because you're controlling it.
Yeah.
GTA, I don't know where GTA does that. And so, I don't know. I don't know if you were like, if you were given, let's say, $500 million and told to make a film, like, what do you think? What's the road you would take?
Oh, I've no idea. Yeah, you'd want it to be dark and gritty, and maybe you go down the Netflix interactive route that has been popping up recently, with some of the decision-making trees where you get to watch a thing and then choose what happens next, which gives you a little bit more of a sense of control over that type of thing. But again, it's so... I mean, it's not going to happen, right? I can't see any world now in which you can imagine how many times Rockstar have been approached in the last 10, 20 years probably going, hey, that franchise you've got is pretty good. Why don't we make it into a film? And for them to reject that every time, when I assume that every time people come back to them, the money is going up and up, you can just see that I just don't think they'd want it to happen. Like, maybe the closest we're going to get is that BBC documentary we've talked about before, which was like the inside story of Rockstar starring Daniel Radcliffe, which, Rockstar hated. But that kind of thing that you'd have sort of, it's a story told from a different perspective, but it's more about the development of the game or the company. And it's, you're following an intern who's just got his first job and he's discovering all of the like different things that are going on and like the power struggles and the politics that are internal in the studio. Like that kind of thing is interesting, but it would all be fabricated. So you wouldn't actually probably end up getting the real story unless they managed to speak to a lot of, ex-employees, and then they could build a bigger picture of what that was like.
Well, this is actually a really good point. So ironically, Dan Houser, who for years had said there was never any sense in making a GTA movie, might be the key to making a good one. Because if he spilled the beans and said, look, this is how it went down and this is my truth, then there's the grounding of a really good, like that Jobs movie, or even the dramatization, the one with Michael Keaton about the McDonald's founder. Something like that, an origin tale of Rockstar done really, really well, is fascinating because this is an absolute cultural touch point. Let's be clear. They've made a chuffing Tetris movie, and that is not about the manipulation of tiny blocks. No. But it's about how a guy makes this thing that becomes a global phenomenon.
But it is actually very good, that movie.
Yes, it is
you would
good.
think, watching that, how am I going to watch 2 hours about a game that is moving some blocks around? But as you said, it's not really about that. It's about how that thing got made.
And there's a version of the Tetris movie made by Illumination where
all the blocks talk.
The L shot block is really sad and he never gets used properly. And it's about him learning to find his place on the grid.
I'd watch both of those films.
But I think far more likely is I actually think a really good documentary style one, heavyweight, well-researched, would be good. But this was a little bit what the BBC tried to do with the Daniel Radcliffe one. Like, even from the limited amount I know about the internal workings of Rockstar, there was a few real things in there that would actually happen, but I think a lot of it was creative BS. Yeah. And I think if it was like that, it would not be a good film, and I think it would be pilloried. And I don't know.
But now, like you say, with more people exiting the company, there might be more chance at some point for someone to want to tell that story, and you never know. We might get the inside scoop told in movie form. Right, one quick thing before we clock off for the day then, Dan. I have found a real-life case that I think is perfect for GTA 6. So see what you think about this. Actually, I wrote this bit before I wrote the bit about the cockroach mound thing, which I think is much more likely. But anyway, a man has found $4 million worth of cocaine while looking for sea turtle nests on Amelia Island beach in Nassau County, Florida. According to police, there was 70 plus pounds worth of cocaine bricks that are worth $1 million a brick, forming the street value of about $4 million. Police say it's rare to find this much cocaine so far north. The Nassau County Sheriff, Bill Leeper, said, "It's very rare here in Nassau County. Many years ago, there were bales of MJ that washed up on the beach, but to my knowledge, something like this washing up is certainly a rare event. More than likely, it was on a boat that law enforcement or Coast Guards were getting close to, and then they just threw it overboard to get rid of it, so they didn't have possession of it. The sea current just washes it along the coastline." A few days ago, another discovery was made in the Florida Keys where a boater found 65 pounds worth of cocaine floating in the water. And I think there's actually a little video of that just floating in there. And more of it was found during the Florida Keys beach cleanup. Now, Nassau County is just about in Florida, as we discussed previously in this episode. It's actually just north of Jacksonville, but it is on the coast. So do we think this kind of thing is going to be referenced directly? Probably not, because this is really recent.
Yeah,
like
it's
this
too
happened
recent
this year. Could you stumble across something like this in the game? I think yes. And could there be a mission where you go and have to recover some drugs, or you're on a boat and you have to throw it overboard and get it later? I would say almost certainly. And this kind of thing, as they said in that police report, has happened before. You definitely, if you were researching stuff and looking at how we could get cool game mechanics or missions into the game, you go, well, drug running is a big thing. They tend to wash up on the beach a lot. I can see them putting that in, or it being like a thing, maybe this is the GTA 6 version of GTA 4's Pigeons. You have to go around and find like 100 bales of coke that are scattered across the beaches or in lakes or down caves or whatever. I could see that totally being a thing.
Yeah, I could buy into all of that. And we talked about like undersea exploration and the coastline clearly playing a part. So that's really fun. The thing I will just add that makes me laugh about this story is the sheriff goes, it's rare to see this kind of thing up north, implying, but down south it happens all the time.
Yeah, those guys.
It's the classic territorial. They don't know what they're doing down there. Just hilarious.
Yeah, so that's a nice little bit of news there to think about and think about how that might impact GTA 6. I think we've covered quite a lot this episode. Please let us know what you think about all the things that we've mentioned in the comments on YouTube. If you're listening on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or anything like that, please give the show a 5-star rating if you think it's worth 5 stars. If it's worth 4 stars, give it 4 stars. Whatever, it's up to you. Please follow us on GTAVI O'clock on Twitter. And if you've got any comments, questions, discussion points that you'd like to send us via email, please get in touch, gtavio'clock@gmail.com. Dan, thank you very much. We are through episode 31. Only less than 70 to go until the release of the game. So we will keep counting down as long as you guys keep coming back. So join us next week for another episode of GTA 6 O'clock.